First off, what's white privilege?
I don't know how to answer that.
Oh, well, just give it a shot. If someone say, hey...
He does not want to answer that question.
Have you ever stopped to question whether white privilege is really an operation?
Not really.
Uh-huh.
And that's the thing. That's what I was saying. She hasn't questioned it.
So the lighter it is, so you see like really light, that means the non-Hispanic white population is less than 25% in these counties. These are all counties, okay? So when it's really light, like here, because these are all Mexicans all along the border, okay? But here, the really dark, so up here in Maine and so on, Maine's a really white state, or northern Michigan, really, really white. And then when you see these light counties here in different places, those are all Native American reservations, okay? So, but you notice how all along here, it's much lighter, meaning that the percentage of white people is much less. So, if you grow up around these areas, or people that grow up in urban all along the eastern seaboard or in California, you think like, whoa, the U.S. isn't very, it's not very white, like there are no white people, but you got to go in the center of the country here. And then suddenly, the black and brown people start to diminish in numbers tremendously. So, you're here at State College with Penn State, but, if you were up in Maine somewhere, you would literally be the only Indian.
Well, that's primarily because, and I'm sure he already knows that, the United States is just primarily white. I think the country is 70% Caucasian American. So if you look at that, I mean, yeah. All I'm saying is I'm just a little confused, man. I'm just a little confused on, where he's getting at necessarily. But anyways, let's continue with the video. My name is Jojo, and I hope you enjoy.
Down in percentage, right? And then this is mostly Asians here, Indians, South Asians, and East Asians. Okay, so just think about the number of white people is diminishing, and will slowly, in places like California, the white people are the minority. Okay, poor Americans. All right, I'd like you to comment on this if you could. White people of all the poor. This circle represents all Americans who are considered to be poor. It's 42.8, so 43% are white. You've heard the term white privilege. What do you think about that in relation to this?
I think you hear a lot of things, but maybe people don't look at like facts and statistics about this. I mean, just looking at this graph, I mean, like a lot more white Americans in America are, I guess, poorer than other racial groups.
Well, majority of people who are poor are not white, but not by much, right? Because it's
42%. That's pretty big.
Yeah. But if you add up everyone else there is black or brown. But nonetheless, it's close to being half and half. Okay, so first off, what's white privilege?
I don't know how to answer that.
Oh, well, just give it a shot. If someone say, hey...
He does not want to answer that question. He does not want to answer that question. And when he first started speaking, one of the first things he said was, wow, there's a lot of poor white people in America. And Dr. Richards, I guess, was technically right. He said, well, the majority of poor people aren't white, but that doesn't negate the point. There's a lot of poor white Americans, and they're just kind of get ignored. They really just get ignored. And I think this conversation is like a perfect analogy, because it's like you have Philip saying, wow, 42% of people who are in poverty are white. That's crazy. And this is no offense to Dr. Richards, because I think he's a smart guy, obviously a professor. His answer to that was, but there are different races of people who are also poor. Yes, that's true, but you kind of ignored the guy's point that there's a lot of poor white people, man.
I don't know how to answer that.
Oh, well, just give it a shot. If someone say, hey, Phil, you go back to China. One of your family members says, hey, what is this thing, white privilege, that we talk about, that everybody's talking about in the U.S.?
I think definitely if you look at the trends in corporations, you can see a lot more white people near like the executives, like the C-suite or whatever.
Yeah.
You see maybe more white people in like colleges, like College of Engineering, you see a lot more white people. Stuff like that, like career stuff, is what one point I could point out right now.
I think like my version of white privilege is when, like someone who's the same as me but happens to be white, like Sally. Sally's also white, but we're very similar. She has more privileges for things over me because I'm a person of color.
Yeah, but what though? Like, do you have do you have an example of what that might look like?
It could be in like the job market or academically or just like, I don't know, like I feel like there's certain things that people of color are taught at home that make us, or like that we're taught that like we're different from from white people sometimes.
Yeah, okay, but
And I'm not going to pause for too long, but I love that she said that. She said that things that people are taught at home. And the reason I'm going to place emphasis on that, and guys, don't forget, these are students talking. These are students in college. They're learning right now. They're in class. But one thing I would want to teach this young woman is that a lot of these things when it comes to privilege are taught. And it gets to the point where you start internalizing these beliefs. For example, white privilege. You internalize that. And then when someone asks you, which Dr. Richards asked you, okay, what privilege do they have? And you can't even answer. And the reason why I think that's a problem is because if you have an internalized belief in yourself that white privilege exists, that white people have a advantage over me in society, that they are just born with an inherent advantage, the least you can do for not only yourself, but for society as a whole, is understand what these privileges are. Because if you don't, you're just going to walk throughout life believing that white people have an inherent advantage over you, and you don't even know what that advantage is, which just happened. And when you're asked, your response is going to be, oh, I was just taught this at home. I don't really understand what the privilege is. All I know is that it was taught. And that's an issue. If there's a society where you say one group of people has more privilege over the next, you need to understand what these privileges are so that you can grow from them, so you can even make legislation against them. But if you have young people who are obviously who are in college, you're going somewhere in life. You're in college learning, trying to be the best you can be, and you don't even understand one of your core beliefs. You don't understand the impact of one of your core beliefs, such as white people have an entire privilege over your entire culture or your entire race. You don't even understand it. You can get brainwashed. You can get tricked. You can get manipulated. So at least try to dive into your personal beliefs.
Is that privilege or is that?
Well, I think it's like they have privileges that everyone should get.
How do you know that white privilege exists? And I'm asking you this it's one of these things that we throw out we just throw it around like white privilege, right? We throw these terms and concepts out, but we rarely stop and say, wait, hang on, what does that mean? What are we actually really talking about? Right? And so you get where I'm going here, because this is not a trap, and it's like, and hey, by the way, if you're watching, it's like she's not going to have an answer to this question. Okay? How old are you?
19.
Hang on. Can you zoom in on my face? Make sure I'm on the stream. Okay, go ahead, slow. Right here. I'm really white. I'm white. I'm white out. I got to try. Okay, listen, man. Lena is 19 years old. Okay, I'm asking her a really difficult question in front of a room full of people, and she's not going to be able to answer this question. But I'm going to ask her to try. Okay, so it's cool. All right, and you're not smarter than her. Okay, keep that in mind. So how do you know it exists?
Like things that we've seen in history so far have shown us that white privilege is real.
Yeah, definitely in terms of history. I mean, there's no question that it's real. I mean, and there's generational privilege, and this is like the miracle of compound interest, right?
Something Dr. Richards said that I guess I agree with is that she's not able to answer the question. And the reason why I agree with that is because, for one, she is kind of young. You know, she can't really. These are really deep questions. That's all I'm saying. But my thing is not necessarily her ability to answer the question. I think she kind of represents a generation of some sorts. And I'm not saying she's not smart or anything. This has nothing to do with intelligence. This has nothing to do with your IQ levels or anything like that. It's just the fact that we are taught, and this is a PSA, we are taught to have internalized beliefs. We are taught to believe certain things as we grow up, and we get to the age of, for example, 18, 19, 20 years old, and we don't understand our beliefs. That's my issue. When it comes to white privilege specifically, because this is a young black woman, if you believe that society, that the country that you're in has an inherent bias against people who look like you, and this bias will exist forever, or this bias has existed for eternity, and it affects your day-to-day life, I beg you, just try to understand, or, you know, try to look into areas that this bias affects you. That's it. Just try to look into it. Because when you don't look into it, and I said this earlier in the video, you can get manipulated. People can trick you. People can lie to you. And that's where we have issues in society. We have groups of people who believe certain things, and they have no idea why they believe it. We need to start questioning our beliefs. And this is not necessarily her. This is just people in general who are much older than her. We have beliefs. We don't know why we believe it. Just start questioning it, bringing it to light, and going into, why do I want to know this? Because, like she said, this was taught to her. Why was this taught to me? Where does this come from? We know the history of it, but how is this impacting us today? These are questions we need to ask ourselves. But let's continue.
You know, when you gather more of the wealth and then you invest that wealth, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at how the United States was set up. It's like with the Brits in India before you kicked them out, that the people who were able to collect more of that wealth for themselves are going to invest it, and they're going to be wealthier. So of course white people have more wealth, and so I'm like, oh my God, right? Okay, so history. Have you ever stopped to question whether white privilege is really an operation?
Not really.
And that's the thing. That's what I was saying. She hasn't questioned it. We try to look at this like, oh, that you're just not smart enough, or you're stupid. This is not that. It's much more, to me, it's much more sadistic. We are taught certain things that affect our day-to-day lives. Someone is telling this young woman that you don't have, like, these other white people in this classroom, they have more privilege than you. This girl said, for her example, the young woman sitting beside her, since she's white, has a better chance in the job market than her. Has a better chance in education than her. This is what she said. But then, we are never taught to question these things. We need to question them. Whether or not it's true or false is something that we will discover. But we are just it's kind of like we're being manipulated. And I'm happy Dr. Richards is bringing these discussions to light, because you do need to question it. Is there white privilege? If there is, how does it affect my life? How does it affect the white people's lives in here? How deep is white privilege? These are just questions. We need to know the answers to them, because at a certain age, you are an adult, and you will eventually be teaching these same things to your children, to your grandchildren, to your brothers, to your sisters. You'll be having these same discussions, and you need to have answers, because if not, we're just passing down ignorance. That's what it is. We're passing down ignorance, things that we don't even fully understand.
Okay, that's cool. That's a fair answer. I mean, we're going to talk about it, because that's part of what this class is, because it is an operation for sure. But, one of the things is it's really important to see the places in which it's an operation. Who has the privilege in India? Like, who? It's not white privilege. So what's well, it is, because, if I go to India, people want to show me around and cook dinner for me, right? So that's white privilege. But who has the privilege in India? Well, you do, obviously, because you're here.
Yeah, kind of, but...
Wait, hang on a second. Hang on. You catch that, right? She's here. She's not in India. She's here. You're gonna be here. If you grew up in the slums of Calcutta, right, you're not gonna be here. Okay, so clearly you have privilege. But who else has privilege? Who has privilege? Like, when you talk about it, who is it?
If you ask, an average Indian, they would say people who have money.
Okay.
So it would be like that. Like people who are rich, people would think that they are privileged,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's always true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna end this video here, but I will say privilege. I think there are levels to privilege. I do think people are born with certain privileges, and I mean physically. Some people, there's a beauty standard in society. If you're more beautiful, you will naturally have more privilege. And I don't care what you say, you don't deny it. If you're the handsome cousin, or if you're the pretty cousin, you probably got more food at the cookout than your other cousins. I don't know. But yeah, there's an inherent privileges, and then there's privileges that are earned, such as, I guess, income or which neighborhood you grew up in, stuff like that. But yeah, I think this is a great discussion to have. Dr. Richards did definitely challenge these students' beliefs. You need to start questioning more things. That's basically the point of what he does. You have to just question things, whether or not you believe there's privilege or not. Ask the question: where does this come from? Is the privilege real? How does it affect me? Does it affect people who look like me but just grew up in different circumstances? How does it exist? But anyways, if you have any discussions or anything you want me to know, comment down below. Certified Jojo, I'll see you in the next video.